A year after the Pedraza tragedy, a reckless YouTuber flies a drone into the besieged church. Through the lens, he sees people in protective gear secretly digging something underground. Just seconds later, the drone goes out of control and crashes into his face, killing him instantly. Strangely, when the police arrive, the body and all traces of blood have vanished without a trace. After the chaos and the battle over the 30 pieces of Judas among the bishops, the old witch of the town secretly takes Father Vergara's body home. There she tears off a piece and writes on it the words, "God will rise in resistance." In a dark ritual, she stuffs the piece of skin into the priest's mouth and covers his body with maggots. The next day, Vergara wakes up, his body still covered in maggots, in a strange building surrounded by figures in black cloaks. Looking out at the horizon, he was shocked to see a river of boiling lava. It turned out he hadn't been resurrected in the human world, but had been dragged to hell. A year later, Vergara had become a ghost town. Since that dark religious ceremony, half the town's population had been committed to a mental hospital. Wanting to attract viewers, a creative couple came to the town. They sneaked into an abandoned house and accidentally filmed doctors chasing an old man, but the clumsy cameraman forgot to press the record button. Later, he and his co-star Haruka found the town's church. It was now fenced off with barbed wire, and a sign announced that the area was being renovated into a resort. The young man then launched a drone inside. They discovered men in protective gear scouring the area, searching for something. Unexpectedly, a man hit the drone, causing it to lose control and fly into the cameraman's face, killing him instantly. Far away, Paco is working as a delivery man at a fish market. After his divorce, he's trying to rebuild his life so he can finally be with Elena. But trouble begins after that horrific battle. Elena is still in a deep coma in the hospital. Suddenly, Paco receives a call from Detective Salcedo, pleading with him to testify. This female investigator was once manipulated by a demon in Pedraza and is being interrogated in Madrid, but the government refuses to believe her testimony. Even so, Paco coldly refuses to help. Just as he hangs up, he catches a glimpse of a tall, thin figure emerging from Elena's hospital room. Paco immediately chases after him, but the mysterious man has completely vanished from the hallway without a trace. Meanwhile, Salcedo is warned by a colleague to stay away from Pedraza, but as soon as she hears about the strange death of the cameraman, she decides to go to the town herself to investigate. At the same time, Haruka and the police arrived at the crime scene. However, the victim's body and all traces of blood had disappeared. The police dismissed it as a prank and left. Haruka, unafraid, decided to spend the night in her car to continue her investigation. At dawn, she spotted the witch peeking through the car window. The witch sped away at incredible speed. Haruka chased after her to an alleyway where the witch vanished. Leaning against a wall, Haruka inadvertently opened a secret door. Stepping into the hidden courtyard, she found terrifying dolls and a coffin filled with maggots in the center. Just then, the witch suddenly attacked Haruka with a scythe. Fortunately, with quick reflexes, Haruka managed to counterattack with a kick. The witch, terrified, fled and hid in a nearby house. Haruka tried to take out her phone to text for help, but the words she typed strangely vanished from the screen. Salcedo arrived at that moment. The witch had mysteriously disappeared, and the secret door on the wall had also vanished. The patients were panicking and refused to provide any useful information about the horrific events of the previous year. But Haruka noticed a crucial detail. The symbols drawn on the wall resembled the logo of the construction company that had fenced off the town's church. Soon after, medical staff brought in an old man. It was the same man who had been chased in the video Haruka had seen earlier. Suddenly, the other patients became agitated, shouting accusations that the old man was one of them, leaving Salcedo and Haruka utterly bewildered. Meanwhile, the retired police chief, Sargento, was secretly avoiding his wife. He was forced to leave her to protect his family's safety. He found a piece of paper with disjointed phrases about a trump card, the name Barbro, and a black hole. He went to a newsstand to buy books on the subject, and then drove to the suburbs. There, he met the town's vagrant youth again. The youth warned Sargento not to look for his wife, as all the former residents of Pedraza were being closely watched. This abandoned power tower was the only safe haven. Through his cryptic and enigmatic words, the youth mentioned a giant stone capable of opening spatial portals. At that very moment, at an auction in New York, a mysterious stone from Peru was being offered for sale. Barbro, the bald Barbro mentioned in Sargento's paper, was determined to acquire it. Unexpectedly, a shape-shifting demon disguised as a buyer drove the price up from $20,000 to $20 million, then vanished without a trace with a bag full of money. Nevertheless, Barbro accepted the price and obtained the giant stone. That night, the wandering youth named Antonio had nightmares. Sargento carefully recorded everything he said. Through his sleep talking, Sargento discovered that Elena's soul was likely trapped in hell. That was why her body was in a coma in the real world. At this moment, Elena suddenly woke up with a frantic heartbeat, but immediately afterward, she fell back into a vegetative state. Indeed, her consciousness was wandering in hell. Elena panicked and fled until Father Vergara appeared. He defeated the surrounding demons and begged her to protect something very important. Disappointed and confused, she asked him what it was. In a flashback, upon waking up with his body covered in maggots, Vergara had to confront disgusting creatures and encountered a tentacled monster. It was the true face of Satan. The demon lord explains that he used the witch to resurrect Vergara in hell for a single purpose. There is someone in the human world who will cause utter chaos and bring destruction to the entire earth. That person is none other than Babro. The demon needs Vergara's help to overthrow him. Meanwhile, in France, Gandia awakens in an extremely luxurious villa. A cunning bishop greets her, trying to win her favor with flattering words and expensive gifts. But in reality, his goal is the 30th silver coin that Gandia is keeping. However, this demonic creature has chosen Gandia as its owner, meaning no one can use force to take it away. She must voluntarily surrender it. The bishop even tries to buy her a muscular six-pack model, but she coldly refuses. Knowing her longing to be a mother, he then helps her adopt a child. She seemed extremely delighted. Because she was infertile, she always longed to be a mother, but he took advantage of her distraction to secretly reach into the drawer and steal the money. She immediately used her supernatural strength to cut off his fingers. In Spain, Sargento encountered Salcedo and Haruka secretly plotting something, so he approached them to question them. When Sargento realized that all three were searching for the truth about Pedraza, he decided to take them to the electric tower. However, Antonio stubbornly refused to descend until Salcedo left. At the hideout, Haruka observed a strange plaque. It recorded the connections between 20th century physicists, quantum computers, silver coins, and even extraterrestrial life. Sargento revealed that Barbaro had replaced Pope Fabio after his death. Haruka then connected this information with a group called Human and recognized the logo of the mysterious construction company that was besieging the church. Salcedo asks a colleague to investigate and discovers that the company is owned by Snook, a giant corporation specializing in weapons and nanotechnology. The corporation's chairman is none other than the director of the psychiatric hospital holding the people of Pedraza captive. It turns out that Snook established the hospital to study the brains of survivors, converting their memory fragments into video to track down the whereabouts of the silver coins. Meanwhile, in hell, Aki is negotiating with Barbaro. He reveals that he knows Barbaro's overall plan with the magic stone and offers a tempting deal. If Barbaro abandons his original plan, the forces of hell will help him conquer the world. Meanwhile, Paco continues his routine of visiting Elena in the hospital. While massaging her as instructed by the doctor, he suddenly discovers a burlap sack tied tightly to her abdomen. Inside is a dead fetus. He was frightened and remembered the tall, thin man he had encountered the day before. A gut feeling told him the hospital was no longer safe, so he decided to help Elena escape. However, the plan failed. He was caught at the exit and thrown into solitary confinement cell number 6. The tall, thin man finally appeared before Paco. He wore a black priest's robe, decorated with the symbol of a red snake coiled around a cross. The man warned Paco that the Lord of Evil himself would soon come to speak to him. His madness wouldn't save Elena. He had to use his intelligence. Confused and unable to understand why the Lord of Evil was involved, Paco struggled to free himself. He stole a nurse's uniform and sneaked out to find Elena. He finally found her in the gynecology clinic. He was shocked to learn she was pregnant. Just then, the doctor walked in and caught Paco. He angrily shouted and falsely accused Paco of being a pervert who abused female patients. Paco was unjustly accused, but he didn't have time to explain that he had never touched her. He had no choice but to knock out the doctor and the nurse, then hastily dragged Elena to the morgue and disguised her as a corpse. Unfortunately, the funeral home staff happened to arrive that day and took her body away. Fearing Elena would be cremated alive, Paco quickly stole a delivery motorcycle and sped after the hearse. He blocked the vehicle, opened the coffin lid, called Elena's name, and kissed her passionately. Meanwhile, Elena's consciousness was desperately fleeing from hell. Suddenly, the great demon lunged at her, grabbed her, and tore her body to pieces. He acted with extreme cruelty and no mercy. Instead of enduring the excruciating pain, the shock from the attack miraculously woke Elena from her coma in the real world. At this moment, the secret of what Vergara entrusted Elena with protecting is revealed. A year before the great demon dragged the priest's soul to hell, he also conveniently took the soul of the late Pope Fabio with him. The demon reveals to them that Barbaro stole the legendary Book of Miracles. This is a black leather-bound book that can blind anyone who dares to look at it. This book contains a summoning spell capable of summoning a supreme entity superior to all other beings. And this treasure is precisely what Elena has been entrusted with protecting. Meanwhile, Paco and Elena are trying to face this new reality. Elena's mood is extremely bad. Having just woken up after a year-long coma, she finds herself inexplicably pregnant. She has no idea who the father is. Paco suspects suspects that the father is the tall, thin, perverted priest, but he still sweetly suggests that they build a family together. However, Elena angrily rejected the idea, her mind preoccupied with the need to abort the pregnancy. Unbeknownst to her, she had been chosen by fate to become the savior of all living things on earth. Antonio had foreseen the future. When Babro's giant stone opened the gates of heaven, the world would face destruction. Only Elena could prevent this apocalypse. Despite the prophecy, Elena spent a fortune hiring a black market doctor to secretly perform an abortion. During the procedure, the doctor panicked, unable to feel the baby's hands or head. The fetus was eventually removed, but what emerged from Elena's body was a gigantic and horrifying mass of flesh. The next moment, this deformed thing sprouted spider-like legs and scurried around the room, dragging its umbilical cord along as it nonchalantly played hide-and-seek. It ran and jumped until it convulsed, and then lay dead, dried up under a cupboard. Meanwhile, the Pope was summoning cardinals to find the traitor hiding within the Holy See. After the disaster at Pedraza, the bishop, also an ally of Gandia, became utterly terrified. He knew that the Pope's staff held boundless divine power and that his punishment was inevitable. During the chaos caused by the dropped silver coins, the bishop took advantage of the lapse in security to escape. Later, he met Gandia again in London and forced her to go to Mexico to steal 2 silver coins from someone. Gandia reluctantly gave in, but she had to comply because the bishop's faction held 3 silver coins. They were holding her adopted child hostage. Upon arriving in Mexico and infiltrating the church, she discovered that this man was a cruel tyrant. He ruled the place like a sick king. She hid her disgust at the human remains on the table. She witnessed the man flaunting his wealth and showing off his 2 silver coins. He scattered stacks of money across the floor as if they were rubbish. Tired of his arrogance, she revealed that she had lied about having only 1 silver coin. In reality, she had all 3 of the bishop's coins. Using the combined power of her possessions, she easily subdued him. She stole the 2 coins and attempted to escape the country. Along the way, she was ambushed and nearly lost her life, completely losing control of the situation. However, she was rescued by Barbaro, who safely transported her to Paris. Believing that there's no such thing as a free lunch, she aggressively displayed the power of her 6 silver coins for self-defense. Even so, Barbaro calmly revealed that he possessed more than 10 silver coins. Gandia agreed to this alliance, but demanded that he settle a past grievance first. She returned and brutally murdered the bishop. He was the one who had been blackmailing and manipulating her all this time. Meanwhile, Elena woke up in excruciating pain after giving birth. She desperately wanted to see her child. Paco revealed that the creature had died violently, but she refused to believe him and insisted on seeing the baby's body. Having no other choice, Paco took her to see the doctor, who was meeting with her colleagues. Sensing something was amiss, the doctor pointed out that she had kept the creature in the refrigerator. When she opened the door, Elena was horrified to see the bizarre flesh spider. The doctor placed the monster on the table and used a scalpel to cut through its outer membrane. Suddenly, the creature came to life, jumping up and clinging to Elena's face like a parasite. Paco reacted quickly, snatching the monster, throwing it to the ground, and violently stomping on it, revealing an ancient key hidden inside its belly. That night, Elena had nightmares. She saw Vergara stuffing spiders into her mouth. Meanwhile, Paco searches online for information about the key and discovers it belongs to an ancient translation academy in Toledo, specializing in deciphering seals and forbidden books from the church. From the underworld, Vergara is watching and deducing that the great demon has set a trap for Elena to find the key. To protect her, the priest possesses a wanderer in the real world and warns her to discard the object and flee. However, Fabio's spirit interrupts Vergara's magic before the message is clearly conveyed, so Elena ignores the advice. That night, she and Paco use a ladder to break into the translation academy. The place is filled with giant bookshelves and a system of lines for transporting books. Strangely, there are no guards. After trying dozens of fake locks on the bookshelves, they walk along the lines and find a hidden door. The key unlocked a long staircase leading down to a chest. Inside, they found a terrifying book of miracles. Remembering the warnings of danger from their nightmare, they decided not to open the book, but to put it away. Suddenly, a loud noise echoed throughout the complex. A gigantic machine, equipped with sharp saw blades, hurtled down the tracks towards them. As Elena was about to die, her aunt Paco jumped onto the machine and damaged the gears, jamming the device. However, another deadly machine appeared, so both of them had to flee in desperation. They were lucky to escape the building, but encountered a frenzied mob outside. These were people who had been hypnotized and were ready to kill to steal the book. Both of them quickly sought refuge in a shop, but the owner there also went berserk and attacked them. After struggling to break free, they ran frantically to the railway tracks. A homeless man lay on the tracks, stubbornly refusing to move. He was just waiting to snatch the book from Paco's hands and run away. But he hadn't gotten far before he was was hit by a high-speed train, Elena had a chance to pick up the book that had fallen to the ground. Meanwhile, Sargento and Salcedo had devised a plan to investigate the director of the psychiatric hospital. He pretended to be insane, claiming to be a former resident of the town affected by psychological trauma. He had recently been admitted to the hospital without arousing any suspicion from the medical team. At the same time, Haruka had gained Antonio's trust. He confessed to the murder of her partner and promised to help her uncover the truth. He led her through a secret passage into the church, which was under government lockdown. He revealed that the Snook Corporation's renovation project was actually a large-scale excavation to find the silver coins lost in the final battle. Haruka immediately took out her phone and started recording. Through the camera lens, she saw terrifying images of corpses and a witch. They panicked and ran away. But then they discovered that all the photos and videos they had just recorded had mysteriously disappeared from their phones. At the same time, at the psychiatric hospital, the director of Snook finally extracted a crucial clue from the patients' minds, a collective memory of a man in a hat who had stolen a silver coin and disappeared into a small alley in the town. The corporation's team immediately rushed to the location, followed closely by Haruka and Salcedo. They searched the alley. The director found an old coin-operated toy. With a strong intuition, he broke open the compartment and found a gleaming silver coin inside. Sargento witnessed the entire event from the hospital window. The next day, the silver coin was given to Barbaro. He opened his briefcase, smugly boasting that he had finally collected the complete set of 30 Judas coins. He held absolute power in his hands and flew to Peru. His helicopter landed near a strange circle drawn on the ground, surrounded by his entourage. He brushed away the sand, revealing the pedestal of a giant stone capable of opening the gates of heaven. He exchanged a triumphant smile with his devotees. He knew that final victory and the end of the world were near. Meanwhile, Elena and Paco were fleeing the streets with the miraculous book. Elena remembered Vergara's advice to go find Lombardi in Rome, but Paco doubted the idea. While they were arguing, their car crashed head-on into another vehicle. In the chaos following the collision, a stranger tried to steal the book. The two fought back fiercely, throwing punches and kicks until they knocked their attacker out of the car. They escaped and boarded a tour bus, planning to hitch a ride at the next stop to the airport. At the psychiatric hospital, Lagina enlisted the help of a mathematical genius patient to find the electronic code to unlock Director Snook's office. Armed with a list of 800 possible combinations, Lagina hid in the shadows, observing the staff. He noticed the password began with the number 4. Guided by intuition, he guessed the code correctly. After breaking into the office, he quickly photographed the top-secret documents on the computer screen and the strange leaflets titled Highclere. He sent a message containing this clue to Salcedo. He was then dragged back to his room by a male nurse under the pretext that he had a visitor. At Salcedo's request, Haruka looked up the term and discovered that the Highclere Forum was just a facade. It was actually a fake climate change discussion group created by millionaires to secretly research dark forces. This organization was led by Barbaro's cult, and its leaders lived in seclusion on luxury yachts to circumvent international law. Meanwhile, Antonio warned that Elena and Paco were in danger. They could only stop Barbaro's magic if they found a 1,000-year-old protective symbol. Salcedo was on a flight preparing for takeoff. She was fortunate enough to call Paco to report this discovery. Suddenly, all the passengers on the bus fell into a trance. The reason was that they were being manipulated by Barbaro's mind. Chaos erupted. They attacked Elena and tried to steal the book, passing it through the windows until a passerby grabbed it and ran away. Paco and Elena immediately jumped off the bus and chased after the thief. They knocked him down with punches and retrieved the book. Salcedo sent the exact location of the symbol to Paco's phone before she had to switch to airplane mode. At the hospital, Lagina was taken to the visiting room to see his wife. Under camera surveillance, he was forced to continue playing the role of a madman and couldn't tell her the truth. Frustrated by his own helplessness and further provoked by the insensitive remarks of other patients, he deliberately went berserk and attacked a patient. He was restrained by 2 male nurses and given a sedative. At night, after waking up from the sedative, he used a wheelchair to avoid attracting attention. He opened a window and climbed along the electrical wiring on the building's facade. Peering into the office area, he witnessed firsthand the corporation's henchmen torturing patients in inhumane experiments. Using the coordinates Salcedo sent, Elena and Paco arrived at the location. However, the entrance was blocked by a man with a ferocious guard dog, another of Barbaro's puppets. Without hesitation, Elena climbed over the area's protective fence. Paco tried to follow, but the dog lunged and bit his leg. He narrowly escaped the beast and quickly climbed over the fence. Both found the star symbol carved into the stone walls of the temple. However, they were trapped there. They didn't know how to get out because the puppet was still blocking their way. Elsewhere, Haruka began to act. She live-streamed, exposing the truth about Snoop's corporation's dark conspiracy to her followers. At the same time, she explained the importance of the star symbol and called for an immediate rescue at the temple. In the middle of the night, a crowd of fans wearing sunglasses gathered in front of the temple gates. When confronted by the man and his ferocious dog, they simultaneously unbuttoned their jackets, revealing t-shirts printed with a star symbol. Immediately, this repelled Barbro's dark magic. Once the area was safe, the crowd escorted the two out, along with the safely protected Book of Miracles. Elena and Paco immediately set off for Rome. However, before they could find Lombardi, he was murdered and replaced by a puppet controlled by Barbro. Barbro tried to trick Elena into giving him the book, but Paco sensed something was amiss. He stalled by asking the fake priest for instructions. Barbro was forced to transfer control of the puppet to an inexperienced henchman. Impatient, the henchman attempted to assassinate Elena, but unable to control the puppet's power, he broke the puppet's own arm. Taking advantage of this, Elena and Paco pushed him tumbling down the stairs. The fake priest shattered into pieces upon impact, revealing his true monstrous form. Meanwhile, Salcedo arrived in Portsmouth and infiltrated a party for the global elite of the Snoop Corporation. She wore a coat and scarf from the organization. She entered the hall just as Barbro stepped onto the stage with Gandia. Barbro began his speech on his reboot theory, comparing humanity to a malfunctioning phone that needed its data wiped and reset. The event of resetting the world was scheduled for March 20th. He explained that it would occur during the conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn, and only the wealthy elite present would be spared. At that moment, Gandia realized Salcedo knew her. She quickly blended into the crowd, seeking an escape route. She took a blue gift bag and approached one of the elite leaders, pretending to be a fan. She deliberately bumped into him and swapped the two bags. Then, she stole his laptop. Gandia called the police, and Salcedo was arrested and escorted into a patrol car. But as soon as the police were distracted, she quickly escaped. She took the stolen computer back to Rome. After escaping the trap at the church, Elena and Paco went to a cafe and coincidentally met the real Father Lombardi. He had just woken up and was fully alert. The three immediately returned to the parish. Lombardi unlocked the chains holding the miraculous book. He turned his back to avoid being blinded by the pages. He used a mirror to read backward in ancient Enochian dialect. He revealed that the last page contained a reset spell capable of summoning God and destroying the world. But no one had ever been able to fully decipher this spell, not even Barbro. To translate it, they needed a Danish mathematician who had been missing for many years, along with 30 silver coins. Barbro had these in his possession. Lombardi claimed the book also contained a counter-curse to prevent the apocalypse. He decided to go to Peru to disrupt the ceremony. However, before they could act, he suffered a brutal attack. He was mysteriously split in two and died instantly. Far away in hell, the great devil, who considered Vergara useless and was about to throw him into eternal flames, lost his only remaining move in his game with Barbro due to Lombardi's sudden death. With no other option, Satan spared Vergara's life and ordered him to return to the mortal world immediately to help Elena and Paco. To carry out the great devil's command, the sorceress performed a new dark ritual at Pedraza. She beheaded a lamb, collected the blood in a coffin filled with maggots, then dug up the sand and pulled the resurrected Vergara back into the human world. Surprisingly, the deceased Pope Fabio was also resurrected. The devil sent him to supervise Vergara and ensure he kept his promise. Because both priests' bodies were in a state of severe decomposition, they reluctantly formed an alliance and broke into a nearby funeral home. They decided to perform self-mutilation and embalming to look normal before setting off to find Elena and Paco. Meanwhile, Salcedo and Haruka were analyzing a stolen laptop. They discovered it belonged to a professor at Cambridge University involved in top-secret physics projects. But they needed to crack the extremely complex boot password to access the reboot project data and restart it. In Spain, chaos engulfs Snook Psychiatric Hospital. Sargento leads a violent riot of patients who overpower medical staff and use the clinic's own sedatives against them. The mob rushes toward the main exit, but the stolen keycard fails to unlock the electronic lock system. In this critical moment, Sargento calls upon the braided-haired girl, a patient who developed telekinesis after being subjected to horrific experiments by the corporation. Sargento instructs her to focus her power on the gears inside the lock. She uses her abilities to break the mechanism and forcefully push open the door. The patients trample the last remaining guards and escape, free to find themselves met by the wandering youth and his allies. While fleeing through the Spanish interior, Salcedo receives a desperate call from Paco. He reported the strange death of Lombardi and the failure to translate the Book of Miracles in Rome. Hearing Paco's voice, Antonio snatched the phone from Salcedo and immediately issued a prophetic warning. He cautioned them to be extremely careful and stay away from those dressed in blue. Just as Antonio finished speaking, the doorbell of their hotel room rang. Paco and Elena opened the door and found a woman in blue blue standing outside, announcing an emergency evacuation drill. Remembering the warning, they lied, saying they would be down soon, and then secretly hid the book. However, their escape was abruptly interrupted as they passed the hotel's swimming pool. On Babro's yacht, Gandia was performing a macabre ritual inside the bathtub. She used the water as a violent teleportation portal, pulling Elena into the pool. Paco quickly jumped in to save her, and she miraculously escaped the spell and surfaced. But Paco was sucked in by that supernatural force and transported straight to the bathtub on the yacht, becoming her prisoner. Babro was furious when he learned of this. He accused Gandia of arbitrarily using the power of the silver coin for personal gain without permission. She had failed to retrieve the book, only to settle a score with her ex-husband. Gandia refuted this, asserting that Elena would never abandon Paco. She was certain she would surrender herself, obediently handing over the book. Imprisoned on the yacht, Paco was tormented by nightmares, a mixture of the horrors of Pedraza and the poisonings orchestrated by Babro. When he awoke in a panic, he saw Gandia gazing at him with a feigned look of adoration. He understood her manipulative tactics all too well. He knew his ex-wife was a narcissist. She had kidnapped him simply to ensure Elena could never have him. In Peru, Babro's miners are working underground, preparing the ground for the final ceremony. Anyone in the vicinity, such as a horse-drawn carriage driver who happens to pass by, is mercilessly shot dead. In Spain, Laguna's convoy carries rescued patients. Salcedo and Haruka continue their journey. Laguna desperately wants to return home to prove to his wife that he is not insane. But Salcedo stops him, warning that the Ministry of Interior is relentlessly hunting them all down. Antonio falls into a trance and senses the impending crisis. He reveals to Haruka that Babro's apocalyptic ritual has two cores. Destroying the second core, a church completely covered in cables, is the only way to stop the cult's plan. Thanks to the recently rescued mathematical genius, the group cracks the password to the Cambridge professor's laptop. Flight records confirm Antonio's words. The second core was located in Barcelona. Elsewhere, Vergara and Pope Fabio were boarding a plane to Italy. Their plan to disguise themselves as ordinary people quickly failed. The decaying bodies emitted an unbearable stench, causing other passengers to complain. Vergara had to go into the restroom to perform a bizarre act. He tightly wrapped his decaying wounds with plastic wrap and sprayed perfume on himself to mask the smell of death. After a stressful flight, they arrived at the airport in Italy. Vergara called Elena. She was terrified to hear the voice of a dead person on the phone, but she still agreed to meet him at the information counter in 5 minutes. However, the reunion was interrupted by airport security. With nothing left to lose with their immortal bodies, Vergara and Fabio engaged in a fierce brawl. They knocked down security personnel and wreaked havoc throughout the terminal. When Elena saw Vergara come back to life, she was deeply moved, but Fabio interrupted her, warning that Babro's assassins had infiltrated the airport. Vergara immediately handed the book to Fabio and ordered him and Elena to escape through the back door and steal a car. Fabio rushed into the restroom. He knew that looking directly at the book would cause immediate blindness. He used the mirrors inside to try and turn the pages. He found the highly sought-after Chapter 5, titled The Eye of God. This was precisely the spell Babro wanted to activate to recreate the world. To safely read this cursed text, Fabio stopped a passerby in the restroom, slammed his face against the mirror, and threatened to force the man to turn the pages for him. Terrified and confused, the man obediently complied. As he continued reading, the dark magic attacked the hostage's eyes with excruciating pain. Fabio traced the text through the reflection and memorized a sequence of numbers just before the man burst into flames and turned into a pile of ashes on the bathroom floor. Outside, Vergara, with his immortal form, was slaughtering Babro's henchmen. Outside, Elena subdued a driver and stole the car. She met Vergara and Fabio at the back door. As the car sped away, Fabio quickly entered the sequence of numbers into his cell phone before he forgot it. He revealed the final translation of the book. To stop Babro's apocalyptic spell, they would have to use blood drawn directly from the eye of the current pope. The three rushed to the Vatican. They found the pope hiding in a fortress, lying in bed, reading a newspaper. He adamantly refused to surrender his papal staff, fearing the loss of God's protection. Out of impatience and contempt for the pope's cowardice and corruption, Fabio used magic to strangle him from a distance. To prevent the assassination, Vergara takes the vial of blood and threatens to crush it if Fabio doesn't release the pope. With no other choice, Fabio obeys. Armed with the shepherd's staff, the three set off for Peru. Meanwhile, Laguna, Salcedo, Haruka, and Antonio have arrived in Barcelona to destroy the second core of the spell. Salcedo receives a call from her superior at the Ministry of Interior, but inadvertently reveals her location for them to track. To find their target in a city with over 500 churches, Antonio climbs to the top of a building and points out the exact direction. It's a glowing tower, but it's not actually a church, it's a giant supercomputer center. After disguising themselves as reporters, they infiltrate the complex and follow one of Babro's henchmen to into a restricted area. Because the main entrance is heavily armed, Laguna suggests infiltrating through the sewers. However, the plan was thwarted when a giant ventilation fan blocked the air duct. The girl with braided hair used her psychic abilities to slow down the metal blades, allowing the group to crawl through the gears. However, when it was Laguna's turn to pass, she suddenly fainted from exhaustion. The fan immediately returned to its normal speed, killing her mercilessly. The survivors continued onward and found a mathematician from the cult. He was using a quantum supercomputer to decode the final page of the book. Before they could stop him, government forces led by Salcedo's boss arrived. A bloody shootout ensued. In Peru, Fabio used magic to intercept a Heigl cult convoy. He took down the guards along the way and stole the protective suits against hazardous materials. He and Elena infiltrated the organization's transport vehicles. Vergara splits off to execute the rest of the plan. He ruthlessly beats up the owner of a motorcycle on the road, ignores the gunfire from her accomplices, and drives to the holiday destination. The desert ground has transformed into a giant magic circle, and Vergara's mission is to use blood from the Pope's eye to short-circuit the spell's energy source. Deep underground in the campsite, Elena and Fabio, clad in protective gear, advance in utter panic. Fabio notices that the chosen elites to survive the apocalypse all wear red bracelets, so he quickly steals one for himself. Amidst the crowd, Paco reappears. His mind has been completely brainwashed and manipulated by Gandia, causing him to blindly follow her. Fabio gathers the billionaire elite and reveals the craziest secret. Dozens of millennia-old flying saucers are hidden beneath the Peruvian earth. He had only successfully reactivated a 3,000-year-old spacecraft. It acted as a space portal capable of transporting a crew away from Earth before the apocalypse. However, this revelation came with a bloodbath. The spacecraft could only hold 30 passengers, but there were over 50 billionaires in the cabin. Barbro's solution was simple: execute the superfluous. He distributed 30 Judas coins, which now served as tickets to the flying saucer. With the giant stone acquired at auction acting as a cosmic antenna, everything was ready. The cult only needed to wait for the supercomputer in Barcelona to decode the password. As soon as the decoding was complete, the flying saucer would take off safely. The magic from the Book of Miracles would be activated to summon the Eye of God to crush the earth. Amidst the chaotic takeoff, Fabio secretly slipped Elena inside the flying saucer. Barbro detected the intrusion through its surveillance cameras, but he decided to ignore it and focus on the final preparations. However, Gandia hadn't forgotten her feud with Elena. She was lurking in the shadows of the ship, preparing to attack Elena. At the same time, news of the attack in Barcelona arrived. Haruka and the police force had destroyed the supercomputer center, interrupting the calculations. But while watching the massacre live on video, Barbro realized the camera had captured the computer screen displaying the final sequence of numbers that had just been decoded. Technicians entered the password into the control panel. Brilliant yellow magical patterns lit up all over the ship, and the flying saucer began to hover, followed by thunderous applause from the elite. In the desert, Vergara had found the precise intersection of the ancient lines of guidance. He assembled the scepter containing the vial of the Pope's eye blood and used the sequence of numbers Fabio had memorized to activate the mechanism of this relic. Suddenly, a military helicopter and a heavily armed force surrounded the area and unleashed a barrage of gunfire. Vergara unleashed the power of the relic. A fiery red mist filled with intense lightning erupted from his hand, tearing the helicopter apart in midair. Inside the flying saucer, Gandia and Paco were blocking Elena's path. Gandia used the power of her silver coins and easily subdued Fabio. Elena tried to fight back, but Paco turned to attack her to protect Gandia. Sensing the unfavorable situation, Fabio manipulated Gandia's mind by warning her that Vergara was about to ruin the entire cult's plan. He tricked Gandia into keeping Elena hostage to use her to threaten the priest. Meanwhile, outside the ship, directly above the giant rock, the billionaires closed their eyes and simultaneously raised their silver coins. A terrifying tremor ripped through the sky and earth. The terrifying Eye of God slowly emerged from the clouds. As the flying saucer began to be sucked into the center of the cosmic being, Vergara plunged his sacred scepter into the ground. A powerful red energy blasted through the air, wrapping around the giant rock and successfully anchoring the ship. However, the struggle quickly exhausted Vergara's strength. The power of the Eye of God was too great to resist. The anchor broke, and the ship flew through the giant being, and the apocalypse unfolded exactly as programmed. In the final moments before the Earth's destruction, the great demon appeared before Vergara and decreed that the priest must leave with the others. Without hesitation, he broke his magical scepter and was sucked into a spatial rift. He awoke to find himself lying on a sun-drenched lawn. Standing up and looking around, he realized he was in Pedraza. But he belonged to a different dimension, a parallel reality where different versions of Elena, Sargento, and the townspeople are living peaceful lives. But that peace peace is fleeting. Barbro's flying saucer has landed, ready to shatter the tranquility. The film ends here. Thank you for watching. See you in the next videos.